Hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome back to my digital classroom. I have a special guest with me who will probably not stay very long. That was my dog, Panzer. But today we're going to be talking about War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, which is one of the very first alien versus human sci-fi books of its time. It was first serialized in 1897 and then published as a novel in 1898, and since then it has never been out of print. It has also appeared in a multitude of forms. It has been a radio broadcast in the 1930s. There have been two films that I'm aware of, one in the 1950s and one in 2005 with Steven Spielberg and Tom Cruise. And then something that I just recently learned, there is a rock opera by Jeff Wayne that tells the story through music, which I think is just super exciting. I'm gonna have to totally look into that. And this is a really quick read. It is a classic, but it doesn't read like a classic. It doesn't have a lot of the convoluted language and a lot of the different types of speaking or references. The only thing that would make it a little difficult is there's a lot of geography references to Southern England, and if you're not familiar with that area, it's just a lot of names, so to you it'll probably just go like, okay, these are names of places, that's cool. But people who know the area probably give this a greater sense of realism. It reads a lot like a nonfiction text, which is really interesting considering the subject matter. We have our unnamed narrator who is going about his experiences. He takes some time to explain his younger brother's experiences because in that way he's able to puzzle piece a full story of what happened. And so he's presenting that in first person as though it were a actual text of a survivor who went through some kind of disaster, and it's like an informational pamphlet. So he breaks the fourth wall. He talks directly to the audience. He lets them know, like, I've already mentioned XYZ, so I'm not going to do it again. Or he'll say, okay, now I'm going to break away from my own experiences, talk about my brother's experiences. And he does that to keep everything organized and to let you know what is and is not his experience. But I think it's interesting because it reads a lot like maybe a peer-edited academic journal or something where you would want to pass it out to people so you can explain the situation. Okay, so the pupper had to go outside, and then I decided it'd probably be best to not let him back in here until we are done with this video so that I don't have to keep starting and stopping over and over again. Now, something I wanted to mention about War of the Worlds is when I am teaching students, sometimes I try to really press the point that having the right answer is not always the goal of the activity. For example, when you have a text that's over 120 years old, it's really easy to Google any kind of information that you might need about this text without actually reading it. Will you have all of the right answers? Yes. Will you have had the experience of reading this book and understanding how awesome it is for the time period and how cool the writing is and how great the details are and how concise the descriptions? No. This is definitely one of those texts where you actually want to read the book. Obviously, your teacher wants you to read every book that they assign to you, but there are some texts that we love more than others, and you can kind of tell that in the passion and how a teacher presents a text to somebody. This is so easy. This would be such a fantastic text to have in a classroom and either show it as a like Halloween spooky story type thing because the suspense in here is awesome, or just to get them thinking about post-apocalyptic dystopias. What would happen if, we had a situation like this and it played out differently. There are so many ways that you can take a subject like this and use your imagination where there are no wrong answers, because when you're thinking about space and alternate life forms, like, you kind of have to get yourself into a realm of possibility. Some people strongly believe that there are life on other planets. Some people strongly do not. So it's not a matter of where your philosophy falls on that line, but where your creativity can pick up this idea and run with it. That is what I think is the best thing about this text. One of the things that I personally liked about this novel is how the author is not necessarily empathetic to the aliens, but he doesn't really pick sides. And throughout the text, you could have a running parallel between what the Martians are doing and how you can find evidence of man doing that in their history. So it doesn't make the Martians out to be evil, and it doesn't make them out to be like some kind of gale force. They're an intelligent being seeking a new planet because theirs is dying, and they're coming to terraform Earth, and they want to make it into a new place for their whole population to come. So a few scouts come and they begin preparing the world by clearing the land and, scattering the inhabitants, and that's kind of what you would do if you went to a wilderness. Say if you wanted to have a homestead and you bought some raw land and you wanted to clear all the brush and you wanted to create a nice flat area where you were going to build, you're going to disturb a lot of populations that already live there. They're animal populations, so you might not think that it's that important, but he makes the parallel that to the Martians, the human are just animals. They're just cattle. They don't see them as an intelligent being. And so it doesn't bother them in their morality, if the Martians have morality, to clear this land that they are claiming for their own. I was reading online reviews about the book because I like to try to see how other people review it before I make my own, and there was a lot of connections to British colonialism, and obviously that connection can be made where you have a strong kingdom that is sending out people in ships or caravans or what have you, and they're just taking over land that belongs to somebody else, but they just don't see them as people. And so there are plenty of accounts of that throughout history. We have the entire American colonies. But if you don't want to get political, you don't have to. It's easy to just pick this up as a really fun, quick sci-fi read that is just worlds ahead of its time period. He was talking about technology for these aliens to have that certainly didn't exist, so he was having to go really deep into his mind. A lot of people really want to point out the heat ray, which was actually what we would consider now a laser, and that's really cool. But what I think was really cool was when he was describing the mechanisms of the machinery that the Martians used to either, these are their fighting machines, but they also had digging machines, and they had little crab machines where they use them to build other machines. But anyway, so he talks about how those machines are built, and it's like a technology form of muscles and sinews, and it's so detailed and complex and perfect that he says the machines looked more alive than the actual Martians, because the Martians are just big head brain blobs with no digestive tracts and no real limbs. They have tentacles in the front, and that's kind of how they handle all of their machinery. So it was really cool that he was saying that the machines seemed more alive than these blob-like creatures that couldn't do a lot of moving on their own because Earth has a denser atmosphere and we have a stronger gravitational pull. So it was really difficult for the Martians to move freely, and so they were really reliant on their machinery. And so that was an interesting thing, because you see the Martians as they actually exist, and they're these soft, squishy, pulpy beings that you're like, okay, why is this thing such a threat? But again, that was a beautiful parallel to mankind, because humans don't have claws, we don't have real fangs, we are not very fast. We're not big threats. If something from the natural world that is a apex predator comes into contact with us, the only way we really hold our own is through technology, and the Martians were the same way. In terms of the ending is probably where you're gonna get the most mixed reviews. I loved it. I just think that how the Martians met their end was really interesting. I'm not gonna say how they ended, because just in case, spoilers and what have you, it is a very old text. It's very easy to find that information, but just for the sake of me being able to say it's a spoiler-free review, I love the ending. I thought it was very clever. I thought it was a fantastic way to write yourself out of a really deep trench, because without the particular ending that H.G. Wells concocted, it's hard to see how, things would have ended in any kind of pleasant way for the inhabitants of Earth. So let me know what you thought about it. Let me see what your questions, comments, or concerns are about this text. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to give this one a 5 out of 5, because not only was it fun to read, but it's something that I could use in the classroom, and it's definitely something that I would pick up again, and I certainly want to look into that rock opera. So not only have I ingested this text, but I'm hungry for more. So to me, that's how you know it is a fantastic book. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for showing up. If you're doing your summer reading, I would definitely do the chapter summaries, though there are really fun quotes in here that you could do if you wanted to. The chapter summaries are probably going to be the easiest, just because so much happens in each chapter. There's not a lot of downtime, and so every time something new is presented, you would need to summarize that for your summer reading to really make your writing make sense for you. If you ever have to apply that to an assignment at the beginning of the year, I would definitely recommend doing the chapter summaries. All right, guys, thank you so much for showing up, and I'll see you on the next one.